The rain hammered against the bulletproof windows of my penthouse office like 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. I stared out at the city below, watching the lights blur and shift through the cascading water, my whiskey glass warming in my palm. This was my kingdom. Every glittering building, every darkened alley, every soul that walked those rain-slicked streets. They didn't know my name, most of them, but they felt my presence like the weight of the storm itself. Behind me, the heavy oak door stood as my final barrier against the world. Beyond it, my men maintained their vigilant watch, ensuring that nothing unwanted penetrated the sanctuary I'd built for myself. 23 floors above the chaos of the city, surrounded by Italian leather and mahogany that cost more than most people earned in a year, I should have felt untouchable. Instead, I felt the familiar hollow ache that no amount of power or money could fill. The intercom on my desk crackled to life, shattering the silence. "Boss, we have a situation." Marcus's voice carried an edge I'd rarely heard in the 15 years he'd served as my head of security. Marcus didn't rattle easily. The man had stood beside me through gang wars, federal investigations, and assassination attempts without breaking a sweat. I turned from the window, setting my glass down with deliberate care on the black granite desk that dominated the room. "What kind of situation?" "There's a child in the lobby, a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She's demanding to see you specifically." His pause spoke volumes. "She says her mother is in danger and only you can help." My jaw tightened. I'd built my empire on calculated moves and controlled violence, but I'd always maintained certain lines that couldn't be crossed. Children were sacred, off-limits in every operation I ran. Anyone who violated that rule found themselves at the bottom of the Hudson River, wearing concrete shoes. "How did she get past building security?" I asked, my voice dropping to the dangerous quiet that made grown men flinch. "She walked right through the front entrance. Security tried to stop her, but she bit Thompson's hand and kicked Reynolds in the shin before they could grab her. She's small, but fierce." I could hear the reluctant admiration in his tone. "She keeps saying she knows you, that you'll remember her mother. Carter, she knows details about this place that she shouldn't. She described the private elevator, the security protocols. Someone told her exactly how to get to you." I felt my blood run cold, a sensation I'd thought myself incapable of anymore. My private life was locked down tighter than a Swiss bank vault. No one knew the specifics of my security arrangements except my most trusted men, and every single one of them had proven their loyalty with blood. "Bring her up," I said after a moment's consideration. "But Marcus, search her first. If this is some kind of trap, I want to know before she sets foot in this office." "Already done. She's clean. Just a kid in a soaked jacket with a phone that's been powered off and a few dollars in her pocket." He hesitated again. "Boss, she's crying. Real tears, not the fake kind. Whatever's happening, she believes it." 5 minutes, I told him, already moving behind my desk, one hand resting on the hidden compartment that held my favorite Glock. Paranoia wasn't a weakness in my line of work. It was what kept you alive. I heard them before I saw them, Marcus's heavy footsteps accompanied by lighter, quicker ones that ran rather than walked. The door swung open, and my head of security stepped aside to reveal the smallest, most bedraggled intruder my fortress had ever seen. She was tiny, all sharp angles and wild determination, beneath a sopping wet jacket 3 sizes too big for her. Dark hair plastered to a pale face that held eyes the color of storm clouds, eyes that looked far older than they should in a face so young. She was shivering, whether from cold or fear I couldn't tell, but her chin was raised in defiance as she stared at me across the expanse of my office. "Are you Carter Blackwood?" she demanded, her voice high and thin but steady. No tears now, just fierce resolve that reminded me uncomfortably of the man I saw in the mirror every morning. "I am," I replied, keeping my tone neutral as I studied her. Something about her features tugged at my memory, a familiarity I couldn't quite place. "And who might you be?" "My name is Clara." She took 3 determined steps forward, her sneakers squelching on my Persian rug. "My mama said to never come here, to never find you. But she's in trouble and I don't know what else to do." Her voice cracked on the last word, the adult composure fracturing to reveal the terrified child beneath. I glanced at Marcus, who stood by the door with his hand resting on his weapon, ready for any threat. "Give us a moment," I told him. "Boss, I should stay." "I can handle one small girl, Marcus." I kept my eyes on Clara, who was watching our exchange with sharp intelligence. "Wait outside." He hesitated, then nodded and stepped through the door, pulling it closed behind him. The click of the latch seemed unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. I moved around my desk, keeping my movements slow and unthreatening as I approached the child. She stood her ground, but I saw her small hands clench into fists at her sides. Up close, the familiar quality of her features intensified. The shape of her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way she held herself despite her fear. It was like looking at a ghost. "Tell me about your mother," I said, lowering myself into one of the leather chairs that faced my desk, bringing myself closer to her eye level. "What's her name?" "Charlotte." The name hit me like a physical blow. "Charlotte Hayes. She said she knew you a long time ago before I was born." Charlotte. The name I'd spent 8 years trying to forget, trying to bury beneath layers of business deals and calculated violence. Charlotte, who disappeared from my life without a word, without a trace, leaving only a hole where my heart had been. "Where is your mother now?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Clara's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her pale cheeks as she pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her jacket pocket with shaking hands. "Bad men came to our apartment 3 hours ago. Mama fought them, tried to keep them away from me, but there were too many." Her voice broke into a sob. "They hurt her, Mr. Blackwood. They hurt her bad, and then they took her away. But before they did, she managed to write this. She threw it to me and told me to run." I took the paper from her trembling fingers. The handwriting was shaky, written in haste or pain, but I recognized it instantly. Charlotte's distinctive script, the letters still formed with the same careful precision she'd used in the love notes she'd once left for me to find. "Carter. They found us. Russo's men. If you ever loved me, please save our daughter. The address is 847 Morrison Street, Warehouse District. Please hurry. See, our daughter." The words burned into my brain like a brand. I looked up at Clara, really seeing her now, seeing past my own blind spots to the truth that had been staring me in the face since she'd walked through my door. The gray eyes weren't just similar to mine. They were identical. The stubborn jaw, the dark hair that wanted to curl at the ends, the way she held herself with a pride that no amount of fear could quite extinguish. "How old are you, Clara?" I heard myself ask, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "I'm 7.5, she answered, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Mama says I'll be 8 in 3 months. She always makes me a special cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, because those are my favorite." 7.5 years old. I did the math quickly, counting backward. Charlotte had left me 8 years ago. Disappeared in the middle of the night with all her belongings and no explanation. I'd torn the city apart looking for her, used every resource at my disposal, called in every favor I was owed. Nothing. She'd vanished as completely as if she'd never existed. Except she had existed, and she'd been carrying my child when she left. My daughter. This fierce, terrified little girl standing in my office was mine. "Mr. Blackwood?" Clara's voice pulled me back to the present. "Will you help? Mama said you were dangerous, that your world wasn't safe for me, but she also said if anything ever went really wrong, You were the only one who could fix it." She took another step closer, her small hand reaching out to grab my jacket. "Please." Those men said they were going to make her pay for something that she'd stolen from their boss. But Mama doesn't steal. She works 3 jobs just to keep us fed and safe. Russo. The name from Charlotte's note solidified into a face in my mind. Vincent Russo, a mid-level operator who'd been trying to muscle in on my territory for the past 6 months. He dealt in drugs, human trafficking, and information, the kind of filth I'd spent years trying to push out of my city. If he had Charlotte, he'd use her to get to me, except he didn't know about our connection, which meant he'd taken her for some other reason, unless she'd been hiding from more than just me all these years. "Marcus," I called out, my voice sharp with authority. The door opened immediately, my head of security appearing with his weapon already drawn. "Stand down. We're going to Morrison Street, Warehouse District. Full tactical team, and I want them ready to move in 5 minutes." "Boss, what's happening?" "Someone took something that belongs to me," I said, rising to my feet and moving toward the wall safe hidden behind a Rothko painting. I pulled out my personal arsenal, a matched set of Sig Sauer pistols and the knife I'd carried since my first kill. And they're going to learn why that was the worst mistake of their miserable lives. I turned back to Clara, who was watching me with wide eyes that held equal parts fear and hope. "You're going to stay here with Marcus's second, Antonio. He'll keep you safe while I go get your mother." "No." Her voice was small but firm. "I want to come with you." "That's not possible. Where I'm going is dangerous." "She's my mama." Tears were streaming down her face again, but her jaw was set with that stubborn determination I was beginning to recognize as inherited. "I already ran away once today. I can't just sit here while she's hurt and scared. Please." I looked at this child, my child, and saw myself reflected back. The same refusal to back down, the same willingness to walk into fire for the people we loved. Charlotte had tried to protect her from my world, but that world had found them anyway. Perhaps it was time Clara learned exactly what kind of man her father was. "You stay in the car," I said finally. "You don't move, you don't make a sound, and you do exactly what I tell you when I tell you to do it. Understood?" She nodded vigorously, swiping at her eyes. "Yes, sir." "And Clara?" I waited until she looked up at me. "We're going to get her back. I promise you that." The smile that broke across her face was like the sun emerging from storm clouds, transforming her features from afraid to fierce. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." "Call me Carter," I told her, the words feeling strange on my tongue. I'd never let anyone address me so casually, but this was different. She was different. And put this on. I pulled off my suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her completely, but it was warm and dry, and the shivering that had been shaking her small frame finally began to ease. "All right, Carter," she said, testing out the name. Then quieter. "Are you really my father?" I looked at her, at those gray eyes that mirrored my own, and felt something crack open in the carefully constructed fortress I'd built around my heart. "Yes," I said simply. "I am." She processed this for a moment, her expression serious. "Mama never told me about you. She just said my father was gone and couldn't be with us. I thought you were dead." "In a way I was," I replied, the truth of it settling over me. For 8 years, I'd been little more than a ghost, going through the motions of building an empire while the part of me that had loved Charlotte withered and died. But I'm here now, and nothing is going to hurt you or your mother again. That's a promise. The rain continued its assault on the windows as I gathered my weapons and prepared to wage war for a woman I'd never stopped loving and a daughter I'd never known existed. Whatever had driven Charlotte to run, whatever secret she'd been keeping, they would have to wait. Right now, all that mattered was getting them both back. Because Vincent Russo had made a fatal error, He'd taken what was mine, and in my world, that was a sin that could only be washed clean with blood. The drive to the warehouse district took 18 minutes through rain-soaked streets that gleamed like oil slicks under the streetlights. Clara sat beside me in the back of the armored SUV, her small form nearly swallowed by my jacket, her eyes fixed on the passing buildings with an intensity that reminded me uncomfortably of myself during my first real operation. She should have been at home, safe in bed with stuffed animals and nightlights, not riding shotgun to a potential bloodbath. But then, she'd spent 7 years without my protection. Whatever childhood innocence she might have had was already compromised. "Talk to me about your mother," I said, partly to distract her, partly because I needed to understand how Charlotte had survived all these years. "Where have you been living?" Clara turned those storm-gray eyes on me, and I saw her weighing how much to reveal. Already calculating, already learning to guard information. The realization made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "We move a lot," she said finally. "Mama says it's because she likes to see new places, but I know it's because she's scared of something. Someone." Her gaze sharpened. "Was she running from you?" The question cut deeper than any blade. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "When she left, I searched for her. I used every resource I had, called in every favor, but it was like she'd vanished into thin air. After a while, I had to accept that maybe she'd left because she wanted to, not because she had to." "She cries sometimes," Clara whispered. "Late at night when she thinks I'm asleep. She looks at this old photo she keeps hidden in her jewelry box. It's you, I think. A younger you, smiling. I've never seen you smile like that." I hadn't smiled like that in 8 years. That version of Carter Blackwood had died the night Charlotte disappeared. Marcus's voice crackled through the communication system. "We're 2 minutes out, boss. Thermal imaging shows at least 8 heat signatures in the main warehouse. 3 in what looks like an office on the 2nd floor. One of those 3 isn't moving much." Charlotte. They had her restrained or injured or both. The rage that surged through me was cold and focused, the kind of anger that didn't cloud judgment but sharpened it to a razor's edge. "Rules of engagement?" Marcus asked, his tone professionally neutral despite the violence we both knew was coming. "Anyone who stands between me and Charlotte dies," I said flatly. "But I want Russo alive. He and I need to have a conversation about boundaries." I glanced at Clara, whose face had gone pale. She was smart enough to understand what I was saying, what I was about to do. Part of me wanted to shield her from this reality, but Charlotte had been right when she'd called my world dangerous. If Clara was going to survive in it, she needed to understand exactly what survival sometimes required. "When we stop, you stay in the car with Antonio," I told her, gesturing to the heavily muscled man in the passenger seat. Antonio had been with me since the beginning, a former Special Forces operator who'd found civilian life too boring. "He'll keep you safe while I get your mother. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, you stay inside. Understood?" She nodded, but her small hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't die," she said urgently. "Mama already thinks you're gone. If she finds out you're real and then loses you the same day, it'll break her." The simplicity of her concern, the raw emotion in her young voice, reminded me why I'd built this empire in the first place. Power wasn't just about control or wealth. It was about protecting the people who mattered. And now I had 2 people who mattered more than anything else in the world. "I don't die easily," I promised her, covering her small hand with mine. "It's everyone else who needs to worry." The SUV rolled to a stop 2 blocks from the warehouse, where 3 more vehicles were already waiting. My tactical team, 12 of the most dangerous men in the city, emerged from the shadows wearing black tactical gear and carrying enough firepower to start a small war. This was overkill for a warehouse raid, but I wasn't taking any chances. not with Charlotte's life hanging in the balance. I stepped out into the rain, immediately soaked despite the expensive wool of my suit. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking structure of corrugated metal and broken windows that had seen better days. This was Russo's territory, or at least what he'd claimed after pushing out the previous tenant with violence and intimidation. He'd been getting bolder lately, testing my boundaries, seeing how far he could push before I pushed back. Tonight, he'd learn the answer to that question. "Marcus, take 6 men and circle around to the east entrance," I ordered, falling into the familiar rhythm of tactical planning. "Wait for my signal, then come in hard and fast. I want them confused about where the primary threat is coming from." "What about you, boss?" I pulled one of the Sig Sauers from my shoulder holster, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. "I'm going through the front door. If Russo wants to play games with what's mine, he can face me directly. That's not a plan. That's suicide. That's why you're the backup." I smiled, feeling the familiar cold focus settle over me like armor. Give me 3 minutes to make some noise, then crash the party. I didn't wait for his response, already moving toward the warehouse with the kind of confidence that came from years of surviving situations that should have killed me. Behind me, I heard Marcus curse quietly before barking orders to the team. They'd follow my lead because that's what they'd always done, even when my plans seemed insane. The front entrance was guarded by 2 men, both looking bored and wet as they smoked cigarettes under a rusted awning. They saw me approaching and straightened, hands moving toward weapons. But they were too slow. I'd spent years honing my reflexes, turning my body into a weapon as dangerous as any gun. The first man went down with a knife to the throat, the blade sliding between vertebrae with practiced precision. He made a wet, gurgling sound as he collapsed, his cigarette falling from slack fingers to hiss in a puddle. The second man managed to draw his weapon, but my bullet took him in the center of his forehead before he could fire, the suppressed gunshot barely louder than the rain drumming on metal. I stepped over their bodies and through the door, entering the dim interior of the warehouse where the smell of rust and decay hung thick in the air. The main floor was a maze of old machinery and shipping containers, providing plenty of cover, but also plenty of places for an ambush. I moved through the shadows like I'd been born to them, my footsteps silent despite the water dripping from my clothes. Voices echoed from deeper in the warehouse, rough laughter and crude jokes that made my blood boil. They were relaxed, confident, completely unaware that death had just walked through their front door. That arrogance would be the last mistake they ever made. I rounded a corner and found 3 more men sitting around a space heater, playing cards on an overturned crate. They looked up as I approached, confusion on their faces that quickly shifted to alarm as they recognized the danger they were in. Too late. My guns spoke in a synchronized rhythm, 2 shots from each weapon finding their targets with lethal accuracy. Bodies hit the ground in rapid succession, cards fluttering through the air like snow. I didn't pause, didn't check if they were dead. At this range, with these weapons, they were dead before they finished falling. The gunfire, even suppressed, echoed through the warehouse. Shouts of alarm rang out from above, followed by the thunder of footsteps on metal stairs. They knew someone was here now, knew they were under attack. Good. I wanted them scared, wanted them to understand what happened when you took what belonged to Carter Blackwood. A door burst open on the second-floor catwalk, and 2 more men emerged, their weapons raised. I dropped to one knee behind a shipping container as bullets sparked off metal around me, the sharp crack of unsuppressed gunfire deafening in the enclosed space. They were panicking, spraying bullets wildly instead of aiming, which told me they were low-level thugs rather than trained professionals. I waited for a break in their fire, counting the seconds between shots, then rolled out from cover and took them both down with shots to the chest. Their bodies tumbled over the catwalk railing, hitting the concrete floor with sickening thuds. "That's 5, I muttered, reloading both weapons without taking my eyes off the second floor. 3 more, plus Russo. As if summoned by his name, a voice called out from above. Who the hell are you? You know whose territory you're in? I recognized Vincent Russo's voice from our few previous encounters, though we'd never met face to face. He preferred to work through intermediaries, sending messages and making threats through proxies while he hid behind his small army of disposable soldiers. I'm the man whose property you stole, I called back, moving silently to a new position as I spoke. Never stay in one place when the enemy knows where you are. And I'm here to take her back. A pause then. Carter Blackwood. He said my name like a curse. I should have known. The woman kept saying someone would come for her, that touching her was a mistake. I thought she was delusional. Where is she? Office at the back. Don't worry, we've been taking good care of her. The mock sincerity in his voice made me want to paint the walls with his blood. Maybe we can work out a deal. You want the woman? I want safe passage out of your territory. Seems like a fair trade. I was already moving toward the stairs, trusting Marcus and the team to be in position by now. The only deal you're getting is this. You walk out of here in handcuffs or a body bag. Your choice. Big talk from a man who's outnumbered. Am I? I raised my hand and snapped my fingers once, the prearranged signal. Immediately, the east entrance exploded inward as Marcus and his team breached simultaneously, flashbangs detonating with blinding light and deafening noise. The remaining guards on the ground floor were caught completely off guard, cut down by precise rifle fire before they could mount any defense. I used the chaos to sprint up the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. Another guard appeared at the top, his weapon raised, but he was still disoriented from the flashbangs. My knife found his kidney before he could fire, and I used his falling body as a shield as I pushed forward into the second-floor corridor. The office Russo had mentioned was at the far end, its door hanging partially open. Light spilled out into the hallway, and I could hear voices inside, urgent and frightened. I approached carefully, my weapons raised, every sense alert for a trap. Stay back, Russo's voice called out. I've got a gun to her head, Blackwood. You come through that door and she dies. I stopped just outside the doorway, close enough to hear Charlotte's labored breathing. She was alive, conscious enough to breathe on her own, but clearly hurt. The knowledge that she was so close, after 8 years of searching and wondering, made my heart hammer against my ribs. You're not walking out of here, Russo, I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage burning through my veins. You're outgunned, outnumbered, and out of time. Your only chance is to surrender now and hope the judge gives you life instead of death. I'll take my chances. His voice had taken on a desperate edge. Besides, I've got nothing to lose. You killed all my men, destroyed my operation. Might as well take her with me. You don't understand, I said, and now I let the cold fury seep into my words. That woman in there? She's not just anyone. She's mine, the mother of my child, and you've hurt her, terrorized her, taken her from her daughter. I took a step closer to the door. There is no scenario where you survive this night, Russo. The only question is whether Charlotte survives too. Silence from inside the office. I could imagine him calculating, trying to figure out if I was bluffing, if there was any play left that would get him out alive. Let me talk to her, I said. Let me hear her voice, confirm she's alive, and maybe we can work something out. Another pause then. Fine. You've got 10 seconds. Charlotte? I kept my voice gentle despite the circumstances. It's Carter. I'm here and I'm getting you out. Can you hear me? The sound that came back was weak, barely more than a whisper, but it pierced through me like a bullet. Carter? Is that really you? It's really me. Your daughter came to find me. Clara's safe, waiting in the car. She's worried about you. Clara. Her voice broke on our daughter's name. She shouldn't have gone to you. Too dangerous. Everything I did was to keep her away from this. We'll talk about that later, I promised. Right now, I need you to do something for me. I need you to drop to the floor when I say the word now. Ma, can you do that? I think so. He has a gun, Carter. He's unstable. I know. Trust me, Charlotte. Like you used to. Can you do that? Before she could answer, Russo's voice cut in. Enough. Time's up, Blackwood. I want a car, a full tank of gas, and safe passage to the city limits. You've got 5 minutes to arrange it or I start shooting. I heard Marcus's voice in my earpiece, so quiet only I could hear it. We've got a sniper positioned across the street. Clear line of sight through the office window. Say the word, and he takes the shot. Stand by, I murmured, then louder, to Russo. All right, you win. I'm calling my people now to get you that car. I pulled out my phone, making a show of dialing while I watched the office door through the gap in the frame. I could see shadows moving inside, Russo pacing back and forth with his weapon raised. Charlotte slumped in a chair but alert, watching for an opportunity. She met my eyes through the crack in the door, and something passed between us. Recognition, understanding, the kind of connection that 8 years apart couldn't erase. She knew what I was planning, knew what I needed her to do. I nodded once, barely perceptible. Now! I shouted, kicking the door fully open as I raised both weapons. Charlotte threw herself sideways out of the chair as Russo spun toward me, his gun tracking her movement. The office window exploded inward as Marcus's sniper took his shot, the bullet catching Russo in the shoulder and spinning him around. My own shots followed immediately, both rounds hitting center mass and dropping him to the ground. I was across the room in 3 strides, kicking Russo's weapon away before dropping to my knees beside Charlotte. She was curled on the floor, her arms wrapped around her head protectively, her body shaking with adrenaline and shock. It's over, I said softly, holstering my weapons so I could touch her with gentle hands. You're safe now. She looked up at me, and I finally saw her face clearly for the first time in 8 years. She'd aged, of course, but she was still beautiful, still the woman who'd stolen my heart with her fierce intelligence and quiet strength. Blood trickled from a cut on her lip, and bruises were already forming on her cheekbone and jaw. Carter, she whispered, her hand reaching up to touch my face as if confirming I was real. How did you find me? Clara, I said, helping her sit up carefully, checking for injuries. She's incredibly brave, just like her mother. Are you hurt badly? Do you need an ambulance? Just bruises and cuts, I think. Nothing broken. She winced as she moved, contradicting her words, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. I tried to keep her away from you, from all of this. I failed. We'll talk about that later, I promised again. Right now, let's get you out of here and back to your daughter. She's been very worried. I lifted Charlotte into my arms, cradling her against my chest as I carried her out of the office. She was lighter than I remembered, too thin, and I felt a surge of anger at the years she'd spent struggling alone when she should have been with me, protected and provided for. Marcus met us at the top of the stairs, his weapon lowered but his expression concerned. Ambulance is 3 minutes out, boss. The rest of Russo's crew is neutralized. What do you want us to do with him? I glanced back at the office where Russo lay bleeding on the floor, still alive but not for long without medical attention. Let him bleed, I said coldly. If he survives until the ambulance arrives, great. If not, that's one less problem for me to deal with. We made our way down the stairs and out into the rain, where the SUV was waiting. Antonio had moved it closer, and as we approached, I saw Clara's small face pressed against the window, her eyes wide with fear and hope. The door flew open before we reached it, and Clara practically fell out of the vehicle in her haste to get to us. "Mama!" she cried, tears streaming down her face as she ran forward. I knelt carefully, still supporting Charlotte's weight, allowing Clara to throw her arms around both of us. The 3 of us huddled together in the rain, Charlotte crying softly as she held her daughter, Clara sobbing with relief, and me watching over them both with something that felt dangerously close to contentment. This was my family. Mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to kill for if necessary. And I was never letting them go again. The penthouse had been transformed into a makeshift medical facility by the time we arrived. Dr. Elena Vasquez, my personal physician, and one of the few people I trusted implicitly, was waiting in the master bedroom with her medical bag and a stern expression that suggested she'd been pulled from something important. She didn't complain, though. Elena knew better than anyone that when I called, it meant life or death. Charlotte sat propped against pillows on my bed, looking small and fragile against the dark silk sheets. The rain had plastered her hair to her face during our journey from the warehouse, and even now, cleaned up and in dry clothes borrowed from my wardrobe, she looked haunted. Clara refused to leave her mother's side, curled up next to her like a protective kitten, her small hand gripping Charlotte's tightly. Several contusions, a split lip, and what looks like a cracked rib, Elena reported, snapping her medical bag closed with professional efficiency. I've given her pain medication and something to help her sleep. The rib will heal on its own in a few weeks, but she needs rest and no strenuous activity. Thank you, Elena, I said, walking her to the bedroom door. Send me your bill. She gave me a knowing look. There's no bill for this, Carter, but you owe me answers. That woman and that child, they're important to you. I can see it in the way you're looking at them. They're everything, I admitted quietly, the words feeling strange but true. I didn't know until tonight, but they're everything. Elena's expression softened. Then take care of them. God knows you've spent enough years taking care of everyone else. She paused at the door. And Carter? Whatever happened between you and Charlotte that made her run, fix it. That little girl deserves to have both her parents. After she left, I returned to the bedroom to find Clara fighting to keep her eyes open, her small body sagging with exhaustion. It was well past midnight, hours beyond when a 7-year-old should be awake, but she was determined to stay vigilant until she was certain her mother was safe. Clara, I said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. Your mother is going to be fine. Dr. Vasquez is the best, and she's given her medicine to help with the pain. But you need to rest too. You've been very brave today, but even brave people need sleep. What if the bad men come back? Clara asked, her voice small and frightened in a way it hadn't been, even when she'd walked into my office hours ago. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind the reality of what she'd experienced. They won't, I promised, brushing a strand of hair from her face in a gesture that felt both foreign and completely natural. This building has security that makes Fort Knox look like a playground. There are men on every floor, cameras watching every entrance, and systems in place that would make it impossible for anyone unauthorized to get within 100 feet of this penthouse. You're safer here than anywhere else in the world. Will you stay? She asked, her eyes pleading. I don't want to be alone. I'll be right here, I assured her. I'm not going anywhere. Charlotte stirred slightly, her hand tightening around Clara's. Come here, baby, she murmured, her voice thick with medication and exhaustion. Mama's okay. We're both okay now. I watched as they settled together, Charlotte's arms wrapping protectively around our daughter, even in her injured state. The love between them was palpable, a bond forged through years of struggle and survival. I'd missed all of it, every moment of Clara's life from birth until tonight, and the loss felt like a physical wound. Within minutes they were both asleep, their breathing synchronized in the way of people who'd shared close quarters for years. I sat in the chair beside the bed, unwilling to leave despite my promise to Marcus that I'd debrief the team once Charlotte was settled. The debrief could wait. Everything could wait. I must have dozed off myself because I woke to the soft gray light of dawn filtering through the windows, and the sensation of being watched. Charlotte was awake, her green eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Clara still slept beside her, curled into a ball with my jacket still wrapped around her like a blanket. "How long have you been awake?" I asked quietly, my voice rough with sleep. "An hour, maybe more." She winced as she shifted position, the painkillers apparently wearing off. "I've been watching you sleep, remembering what it was like when we were together. You always slept so lightly, ready to wake at the slightest sound. Some things haven't changed." "Some things have," I countered, rising from the chair to pour water from the pitcher Elena had left on the bedside table. I handed Charlotte the glass and watched as she drank gratefully. 8 years, Charlotte. 8 years I've wondered where you went, why you left, if you were even alive." "I know," she whispered, guilt washing over her features. "I'm sorry, Carter. I'm so sorry." Sorry isn't enough. I kept my voice low to avoid waking Clara, but the anger I'd been suppressing since the warehouse bubbled up despite my best efforts. "You were carrying my child, and you disappeared without a word. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I thought you were dead. I grieved for you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I had to leave. If I'd stayed, she would have been in danger. You would have been in danger. Danger from what? From who? I demanded, frustration sharpening my tone. I've spent years building an empire specifically to protect the people I care about. Whatever threat you thought you were running from, I could have handled it. Not this one. She set the water glass down with shaking hands. "Carter, there are things you don't know about me, about my past. Things I never told you because I thought I'd escape them. I was wrong." I pulled the chair closer to the bed, leaning forward so our faces were inches apart. "Then tell me now. Everything. No more secrets, no more running. If we're going to fix this, if I'm going to protect you and Clara properly, I need to know what we're up against." She glanced at our sleeping daughter, her expression torn between the need to confess and the desire to shield Clara from the truth. "Not here," she said finally. "Not where she can hear if she wakes up. Some of it, she knows the basics, but not everything. She doesn't need that burden." I nodded, understanding the desire to protect even as it frustrated me. "All right. But soon, Charlotte. Today. I've waited 8 years for answers. I won't wait any longer." "I know." She reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against my hand where it rested on my knee. "Thank you for coming for me. For believing Clara when she must have seemed like some crazy child with a wild story. For not hesitating." "She's my daughter," I said simply, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. The moment I saw her, really saw her, I knew. She has my eyes, my stubbornness. How could I not help her? "She has more than that," Charlotte said softly. "She has your courage, your sense of justice, your inability to back down from a fight even when the odds are against you." I tried to raise her differently, tried to teach her to be cautious and careful. But she's your daughter, through and through. Pride swelled in my chest, an unfamiliar but not unwelcome sensation. She bit a security guard and kicked another to get past them. Marcus was impressed despite himself. A ghost of a smile crossed Charlotte's face. "That sounds like her. She once punched a boy in her class who was bullying a smaller kid, got suspended for 3 days. I tried to be stern about the violence, but inside I was proud of her for standing up for someone who couldn't defend themselves." We fell into silence, the weight of 8 years and 1,000 unspoken words hanging between us. Outside, the city was waking up, the sounds of traffic and life filtering up even to our elevated sanctuary. A new day was beginning, bringing with it the need for difficult conversations and harder choices. "I never stopped loving you," Charlotte whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. Even when I was running, even when I was trying to build a life without you, I never stopped. Every time I looked at Clara, I saw you. It was torture and comfort all at once. I never stopped either, I admitted, the confession easier than I'd expected. I buried myself in work, in building the business, in establishing power and control. I told myself it was about respect and influence, but really, I think I was trying to create something so strong that nothing could take it from me the way you were taken. I wasn't taken, Carter. I left. Why? The question burst from me with more force than I'd intended. That's what I've never understood. Things were good between us. We were happy. We had plans. And then one morning I woke up, and you were gone. No note, no phone call, no explanation. Just gone. She opened her mouth to answer, but Clara stirred between us, her small face scrunching up as consciousness slowly returned. We both went still, watching as our daughter's eyes fluttered open and focused first on her mother, then on me. You're still here, Clara said, relief evident in her voice as she looked at me. I thought maybe I dreamed it all. The warehouse, the rescue, you being my father. Not a dream, I assured her. All very real. How did you sleep? Better than I have in weeks, she admitted, sitting up carefully and looking around the bedroom with wide eyes. In the chaos of the previous night, she hadn't had much chance to take in her surroundings. Now, in the morning light, the opulence of the space was undeniable. This place is huge. Is this really where you live? It is. And now it's where you and your mother will live too, at least until we figure out what comes next. Charlotte tensed beside me. Carter, we can't just move in with you. We have our apartment, our lives. You had an apartment, I corrected, pulling out my phone to show her the security footage Marcus had sent during the night. Russo's men trashed it looking for leverage against you. The landlord is threatening eviction, and even if he wasn't, the place isn't safe anymore. Everyone knows you were taken from there. Anyone looking for you will start at that address. She stared at the footage, her face paling as she watched strange men destroy the modest home she'd built for herself and Clara. We can find somewhere else. A different neighborhood. A different city, even. No. The word came out harder than I'd intended, but I didn't soften it. No more running, Charlotte. I meant what I said last night. You're mine to protect now, both of you. That means staying where I can keep you safe until we've dealt with whatever threat sent you running in the first place. You can't just decide that for us. Yes, I can. I met her gaze steadily, letting her see the determination in my eyes. I've spent 8 years not knowing if you were alive or dead. I've missed the first 7 years of my daughter's life. I'm not losing either of you again, because you're too stubborn to accept help. It's not stubbornness. It's survival. The things I'm running from, Carter, they don't care about your power or your money. They'll come for us eventually, and when they do, anyone nearby becomes collateral damage. Then let them come. I leaned back in my chair, my voice dropping to the dangerous quiet that made grown men flinch. I've built an empire on the principle that you don't touch what's mine. Anyone who tries learns that lesson exactly once, because they don't survive long enough for a second attempt. Clara had been watching our exchange with the careful attention of a child used to reading adult moods. Now she spoke up, her voice small but determined. I like it here. It's safe and warm, and there's food that isn't from a dollar store. Can we stay, Mama? Please? Charlotte looked at our daughter, then at me, and I saw the moment her resistance crumbled. She was exhausted, hurt, and scared, and underneath it all was the same woman who'd once trusted me with her heart. That woman was still there, buried under years of running and hiding, but still present. Temporarily, she conceded, until my rib heals and we can make a proper plan. But Carter, We need to talk, soon, before you make any more decisions about our future." Agreed. I stood, stretching muscles that had stiffened from sleeping in the chair. "But first, Clara needs breakfast, and you need more pain medication. The serious conversations can wait until you've both had a chance to recover from last night." I called down to the kitchen, where my live-in chef was already preparing the day's meals, and requested a child-friendly breakfast be sent up. While we waited, I showed Clara around the penthouse, watching her eyes go wide at the swimming pool, the game room, the library filled with books. "Do you really read all these?" she asked, running her fingers along the leather spines with something like reverence. "Most of them. Reading was how I educated myself when I was younger. Books are windows into worlds and minds you'd never otherwise access." "Mama reads to me every night," Clara said. Or she did, before we had to pack up and move again. We had to leave most of our books behind at the last place. The casual mention of their transient life, the constant uprooting and abandonment of possessions, made my jaw tighten with suppressed anger. Not at Charlotte, not exactly, but at the circumstances that had forced her to live that way. At the mysterious threat that had driven her from the safety and stability I could have provided. Breakfast arrived on silver trays, enough food to feed a small army. Fresh fruit, pancakes, eggs prepared 3 different ways, bacon, sausages, pastries from the French bakery 3 blocks away. Clara's eyes went wide with wonder, and even Charlotte managed a small smile at her daughter's enthusiasm. We ate together in the informal dining area, the morning sun streaming through the windows and bathing everything in golden light. It felt domestic, normal, like we were a real family sharing a real meal, rather than 3 people brought together by violence and 8 years of separation. But as I watched Charlotte push food around her plate, barely eating despite her obvious hunger, I knew that the normality was an illusion. There were still too many secrets between us, too many unanswered questions, and until I knew what had driven her away, until I understood the threat she'd been running from, this fragile peace would remain exactly that. Fragile. The reckoning was coming. Today, tomorrow, soon. And when it came, I would finally understand whether the woman I'd loved for 8 years had been protecting me or protecting herself. Either way, I was done waiting for answers. After breakfast, I settled Clara in the game room with instructions to Antonio to keep her entertained and safe while Charlotte and I had our overdue conversation. She protested leaving her mother, but Charlotte assured her it would only be for a little while, and the promise of video games she'd never been able to afford proved too tempting to resist. I led Charlotte to my private study, a room few people ever entered. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but heavy curtains could be drawn for complete privacy. The walls were lined with books and art I'd collected over the years, each piece a reminder of a deal made or an enemy vanquished. This was where I conducted my most sensitive business, where secrets were shared and fates decided. Charlotte moved slowly, the pain medication helping, but not eliminating the discomfort from her cracked rib. I guided her to the leather sofa near the fireplace, watching as she settled carefully against the cushions. Even injured and exhausted, she was beautiful, her green eyes sharp with intelligence despite the circumstances. "Before you start," I said, pouring us both glasses of water from the bar, "I need you to understand something. Whatever you're about to tell me, whatever secrets you've been keeping, they don't change certain facts. Clara is my daughter. You're the mother of my child. Those 2 things alone mean I will protect you both with everything I have, regardless of what came before." She accepted the water gratefully, taking a long drink before meeting my eyes. "What if what I tell you makes you realize we're more trouble than we're worth? That the danger following me is bigger than even your considerable resources can handle? Then we'll deal with it together." I sat in the chair across from her, close enough to reach out if needed, but giving her space to speak. "No more running, Charlotte. Whatever this is, we face it head-on." She was silent for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass as she gathered her thoughts. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My name isn't really Charlotte Hayes, it's Charlotte Volkoff." The name hit me like a physical blow. Volkoff. One of the most powerful crime families in Eastern Europe, with tentacles reaching into every major city in the world. They dealt in everything illegal and profitable, from weapons trafficking to human smuggling, and they were known for their brutality toward those who crossed them. "Volkoff," I repeated, my mind racing through the implications. "As in the Volkoff Bratva?" She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "My father was Dmitry Volkoff. I was his only child, his precious daughter who was supposed to marry well and cement alliances for the family. But I didn't want that life. I'd seen what it did to people, the violence and corruption that followed my father everywhere. So when I turned 21, I ran. How did you escape? Men like Dmitry Volkoff don't just let their daughters walk away. I faked my death." She finally looked up at me, and I saw the weight of that decision in her eyes. "There was a car accident. A fire. They found remains they believed were mine. And my father mourned his daughter while I started a new life with forged documents and a new identity. I thought I was free." I stood, needing to move as I processed this information. Charlotte wasn't just some woman with a dangerous past. She was the daughter of one of the most feared men in the criminal underworld. If Dmitry Volkoff discovered she was alive, he would move heaven and earth to reclaim her or punish her for the deception. "When did you realize they knew you were alive?" I asked, pacing to the windows and staring out at the city below. "About 8 years ago. I was with you, happy for the first time in years, thinking I'd finally escape my past. Then one night, I got a message from someone I'd thought was dead, one of my father's most trusted men. He said he knew I was alive, knew where I was, and knew about you. He gave me 2 choices. Disappear and never contact you again, or watch everyone I loved die slowly while my father's people made me witness every moment." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. She'd left to protect me. The realization should have brought relief, confirmation that she hadn't stopped loving me, but instead, it brought a fresh wave of anger. "You should have told me," I said, turning back to face her. "I could have protected us both. We could have faced this together." "You don't understand." She stood too, wincing at the movement but clearly needing to make her point face to face. 8 years ago, you were powerful but not untouchable. The Volkoff family has resources and reach that dwarf even what you've built since then. They have connections in governments, law enforcement, military organizations. Going to war with them would have been suicide. And instead, you chose to let me think you were dead, or that you'd stopped loving me. You chose to raise my daughter alone, struggling to survive, always looking over your shoulder. How was that better? Because you were alive. Her voice rose, passion breaking through the careful control she'd maintained. Don't you understand, Carter? If I'd stayed, if I'd told you the truth, you would have done exactly what you're doing now. You would have decided to fight, to protect me, and they would have killed you for it. I couldn't live with that. I'd rather spend the rest of my life running than know I'd gotten you killed. The raw emotion in her voice, the tears streaming down her face, made my anger deflate like a punctured balloon. She'd made an impossible choice in an impossible situation, prioritizing my life over her own happiness and safety. How could I fault her for that, when I would have done the same to protect her? I crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her gently into my arms and feeling her collapse against me as the sobs came. "I'm sorry," she kept saying, her face pressed against my chest. "I'm so sorry." "Shh," I murmured, running my hand through her hair with a tenderness I'd almost forgotten I possessed. It's okay. We'll figure this out. You don't understand. When Russo's men took me, they weren't working for him. They were testing me, trying to confirm I was who they thought I was. Someone tipped them off, someone who knows my real identity. It's only a matter of time before my father learns I'm alive, and that I have a daughter. I pulled back enough to look at her face, wiping away her tears with my thumbs. Then we need to move first. We need to establish defenses and make it clear that touching you means going to war with me. Your father is powerful, but so am I. And I have something he doesn't. What's that? Everything to lose. I kissed her forehead gently. He's fighting to maintain control and respect. I'm fighting for my family. There's no force more dangerous than a man protecting what he loves. She looked up at me, hope and fear warring in her expression. You still love me? After everything? I never stopped, I admitted. I tried to move on, tried to bury what I felt under layers of business and power. But you were always there, a ghost haunting every decision I made. And now that I know you left to protect me rather than because you stopped caring, how could I love you any less? I don't deserve you, she whispered. Maybe not. But you have me anyway. I tilted her chin up, bringing our faces close together. And so does Clara. We're a family, Charlotte, whether Dmitri Volkov likes it or not. The only question is whether we let him dictate the terms of our lives, or whether we take control ourselves. Taking control means going to war with one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. I've been preparing for war my entire life. The only difference is this time, I have something worth fighting for. Before she could respond, before I could second-guess the decision that was forming in my mind, I closed the distance between us and kissed her. It was gentle at first, mindful of her split lip and injuries. But when she responded with equal passion, I deepened the kiss, pouring 8 years of longing and loss into the connection between us. She tasted like memory and promise, like everything I'd lost and everything I might regain. Her hands fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer despite the pain it must have caused her ribs, and I was careful to support her weight while letting her lead the intensity. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. We're going to get Clara killed. You understand that, don't you? If we stay together, if we try to fight my father, she becomes a target. She's already a target, I pointed out. The moment those men confirmed your identity, they confirmed hers too. Running won't protect her now. The only thing that will is making it clear that hurting her means consequences so severe that even the Volkov Bratva thinks twice. How do we do that? I smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile I wore when planning something that would make my enemies regret the day they were born. We remind the world exactly who Carter Blackwood is, and what happens to people who threaten what's mine. Your father built his empire on fear and respect. It's time he learned that there are things in this world more frightening than the Volkov family. Charlotte searched my face, looking for doubt or hesitation and finding none. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Tell me everything you know about your father's organization. Every contact, every weakness, every secret you learned growing up in that world. I need to understand the enemy before I can defeat them. For the next 2 hours, Charlotte shared everything. She told me about the structure of the Volkov Bratva, the key players and their relationships, the legitimate businesses that served as fronts for illegal operations. She described her father's paranoia, his tendency to trust only family, his belief that blood loyalty was the only loyalty that mattered. She also told me about her childhood, growing up in luxury but surrounded by violence, about watching her father order executions over dinner, about being taught to shoot a gun before she could read. about the constant security and isolation that came with being Dmitry Volkov's daughter. "He loved me in his own way," she said quietly, staring at her hands. "But his love was possessive, controlling. I was a prize to be displayed, a piece on his chessboard to be moved for strategic advantage. When he arranged my marriage to a man twice my age who'd killed his previous wife, I knew I had to escape, or become just another victim of his ambitions." The more she talked, the clearer the picture became. Dmitry Volkov was powerful and ruthless, but he was also predictable. He valued respect above all else, family loyalty second, and everything else was expendable. If I could find a way to challenge him that threatened both his respect and his family image, I might be able to force a confrontation on my terms rather than his. "What about your mother?" I asked. "Is she still alive?" Charlotte's face darkened. "She died when I was 12. Cancer. Officially. But I always wondered if my father had something to do with it. She'd been talking about leaving, about taking me away from the life. He would have seen that as the ultimate betrayal." "And you have no siblings?" "None that survived. My father's wives and mistresses bore other children over the years, but none lived past infancy except me. Some said it was bad luck. Others whispered darker things." The pieces were falling into place. Dmitry Volkov was a man who eliminated threats and competition, even within his own family. His daughter's survival had been contingent on her usefulness to his plans. When she'd escaped that predetermined future, she'd become a liability instead of an asset. But now she'd given him a granddaughter. In the twisted logic of men like Dmitry Volkov, that changed the equation. Clara was his blood, his legacy, potentially even his heir if he could control her upbringing. He would want her brought into the family, raised to understand and eventually lead his empire. "He'll come for Clara," I said, voicing the realization that had been building throughout Charlotte's story. Not to hurt her, but to claim her, to bring her into the fold and raise her as he tried to raise you. Charlotte's face went pale. "You're right. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. He'll see her as a second chance, an opportunity to mold a successor from childhood. He'll try to take her from us. Let him try." I stood, moving to my desk where I kept secure communication equipment. "But first, we're going to make sure everyone understands exactly what they're dealing with. Your father may have international reach, but I have something he lacks." "What's that?" "Home field advantage." I began making calls, summoning my most trusted people to an emergency meeting. "This city is mine, Charlotte. Every street, every building, every person in a position of power. If Dmitry Volkov wants to come for Clara, he'll have to go through me first. And I promise you, that's a mistake he'll only make once." As I made the arrangements, I felt Charlotte's eyes on me, watching as I transformed from the man who'd kissed her so gently into the ruthless criminal kingpin who'd built an empire on calculated violence. She needed to see both sides of me, needed to understand that the man who would protect her with tenderness was the same man who would destroy her enemies without hesitation. When I finished the calls, I turned back to find her standing by the window, her reflection in the glass showing a mixture of fear and determination. "There's no going back after this," she said quietly. "Once we commit to fighting my father, there's no peaceful resolution. It ends with one of you dead." "I know." I joined her at the window, standing close enough that our shoulders touched. "But Charlotte, I've spent 8 years building toward this moment, even if I didn't know it. Everything I've done, every alliance I've forged, every enemy I've destroyed, it was all preparation for the one fight that truly matters: protecting my family." She turned to look at me, and I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago looking back. Fierce, intelligent, capable of both great love and great sacrifice. Don't die on me, Carter Blackwood. Clara's already lost 8 years with her father. She doesn't deserve to lose you just as she's found you. I don't plan to die, I assured her. I plan to win. And then we're going to live the life we should have had all along. You, me, and Clara. Without shadows or secrets or fear. That sounds like a fairy tale. Then let me be the dragon who makes it come true. I pulled her close, mindful of her injuries, but needing to feel her against me. Trust me, Charlotte. One more time. Let me protect you the way I should have 8 years ago. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could feel her weighing the decision, calculating the risks, trying to see all the angles. Finally, she nodded against my chest. Okay, we do this together. But Carter, promise me one thing. Anything. If it comes down to a choice between your life and ours, you save yourself. Clara needs at least one parent to survive this. Promise me that if it goes wrong, you'll walk away. I can't promise that. Then promise me you'll try to survive, that you won't throw your life away on some grand gesture. We need you alive, not martyred. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. I promise I'll do everything in my power to survive. But Charlotte, understand this. If saving you and Clara means sacrificing myself, I'll do it without hesitation. That's not negotiable. She pulled back to look at me, tears shining in her eyes. You're impossible. I'm in love, I corrected. There's a difference. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. The team was assembled and waiting in the conference room. It was time to brief them on the situation and begin planning our defense against the Volkov Bratva. Come with me, I said, offering Charlotte my hand. I want them to see who they're protecting and why it matters. These men need to understand that this isn't just business. It's personal. She took my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt both familiar and new. Together, we left the study and headed toward the conference room where my most trusted soldiers waited. As we walked, I felt the weight of the coming conflict settling over me like armor. Dmitry Volkov had spent decades building his empire on blood and fear. But he'd never faced someone with as much to lose as I had. He was about to learn that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with nothing to lose, but the one fighting to protect everything that matters. The war was coming, and I intended to win it. The conference room fell silent as Charlotte and I entered. 12 of my most trusted men sat around the long table, each one a veteran of countless battles, both literal and figurative. These weren't just employees. They were the inner circle, the ones who'd proven their loyalty with blood and sacrifice over the years. They'd kill for me without question, and I'd do the same for them. Marcus stood at the head of the table, a digital display behind him showing a map of the city, divided into territories and zones of control. He'd been with me from the beginning, when we were both young and stupid and thought we could take on the world with nothing but ambition and brass knuckles. We'd succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, but the cost had been high. Gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying the authority that came from years of command. This is Charlotte Volkov, formerly known as Charlotte Hayes. She's the mother of my daughter, and as of now, she and the child are under our protection. The name Volkov caused a ripple of recognition around the table. These men knew the players in the international criminal underworld, understood the implications of that family name. To their credit, no one spoke or questioned the decision. They simply waited for more information. 8 years ago, Charlotte faked her death to escape her father's organization. Dmitry Volkov believed his daughter was dead and mourned her accordingly. But recently, certain events have revealed that she's alive, and it's only a matter of time before Dmitry himself learns the truth. When that happens, he'll come for her and for Clara, Our job is to make sure he fails. I nodded to Marcus, who brought up a new screen showing photographs and dossiers of key Volkov Bratva members. This is what we're up against. Dmitry Volkov controls operations in 17 countries, with an estimated revenue of $2 billion annually. He has politicians, judges, and law enforcement on his payroll across multiple continents. His organization is older, larger, and more established than ours. So, why are we picking this fight? Asked Victor, one of my senior lieutenants. His question wasn't insubordination. He was the kind of man who needed to understand the why before committing fully to the how. Because they picked it first when they sent Russo's men after Charlotte, I replied, and because that little girl sleeping in my game room is my daughter, and I will burn the world to ashes before I let Dmitry Volkov take her from us. This isn't optional, Victor. This is happening. The only question is whether you're with me or not. Victor didn't hesitate. I'm with you, boss. Always have been. I just needed to hear you say it's personal. Business fights, we can walk away from if the cost gets too high. Family fights, we see through to the end no matter what. Murmurs of agreement circled the table. These men understood loyalty, understood that the bonds we'd forged went beyond simple employment. We were a family too, in our own way, and family protected its own. Charlotte, I said, gesturing for her to step forward. Tell them what you told me. They need to understand what we're facing. She moved to stand beside me, and I felt her hand brush against mine, seeking reassurance. I took it, holding her fingers firmly as she addressed the room. My father is a monster, she began, her voice steady despite the tremor I could feel in her hand. But he's a calculating monster. He doesn't make moves without thinking 3 steps ahead, and he doesn't tolerate failure or disloyalty. If he learns I'm alive, he'll see it as the ultimate betrayal, a daughter who chose to die rather than fulfill her duties to the family. She described the organization's structure, the key players and their relationships, the territories they controlled and the operations they ran. She talked about the code of silence that governed the Bratva, the blood oaths that bound members for life, the consequences of breaking those oaths. But he has weaknesses too, she continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. He's paranoid, trusts almost no one outside the family bloodline. He's also superstitious, believes in signs and omens. And most importantly, he values reputation above almost everything else, the respect of other families, the fear his name inspires. These things matter to him more than money or power. How do we use that against him? Marcus asked, leaning forward with interest. Charlotte glanced at me, and I nodded encouragement. You challenge him publicly, she said. You make it known that his daughter is alive, under the protection of Carter Blackwood, and that any attempt to reclaim her will be met with total war. You force him to choose between his pride and his pragmatism. If he backs down, he loses face with the other families. If he attacks, he risks everything on a war he might not win. That's a dangerous game, Victor observed. It forces his hand, makes the conflict inevitable. The conflict is already inevitable, I corrected. The moment someone confirmed Charlotte's identity, this became unavoidable. What we're doing is making sure it happens on our terms, in our city, where we have every possible advantage. For the next hour, we planned. Marcus outlined defensive measures for the penthouse, the building, and key locations throughout the city. Victor proposed offensive operations against Volkov assets and allies, ways to disrupt their operations, and force them to fight on multiple fronts. Others contributed intelligence networks, technological surveillance, and contingency plans for various scenarios. Charlotte proved invaluable, her insider knowledge filling gaps in our understanding and revealing vulnerabilities we wouldn't have otherwise known. She described safe houses that might be used for staging operations, identified which family members were loyal to Dmitry, and which might be persuaded to stay neutral, and explain the protocols for how the Bratva typically conducted warfare. They'll start with intimidation, she explained. Threatening messages, demonstrations of power, making it clear what they're capable of. If that doesn't work, they'll move to surgical strikes against secondary targets, people close to you but not you directly. They want you to come to the table ready to negotiate from a position of weakness. That's not going to happen, I said firmly. We don't negotiate. We don't back down. We make it clear from the first moment that touching anything connected to me means death. No warnings, no proportional responses. Just total, overwhelming retaliation. That's a scorched earth approach, Marcus observed. It'll work, but the cost could be high. I know. I looked around the table, meeting each man's eyes in turn. Which is why I'm giving all of you an out right now. This isn't a normal operation. This is war with one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world, and the casualties could be significant. If any of you want to step back, to protect your families and sit this one out, I'll understand. No judgment, no consequences. Just tell me now. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply stared back at me with the kind of fierce loyalty that couldn't be bought or coerced, only earned through years of fighting side by side. All right then, I said, feeling something like pride swell in my chest. Let's get to work. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, covering every detail from ammunition stockpiles to escape routes to protocols for various threat levels. By the time we finished, we had a comprehensive defensive plan and the beginnings of an offensive strategy designed to make Dmitry Volkov regret the day he'd let his daughter escape. As the men filed out, Marcus lingered, waiting until we were alone with Charlotte before speaking. Boss, there's something you should know. While you were in the study with Charlotte, we got word through our police contacts. Russo survived the warehouse. He's in critical condition at County General, under guard, but he's talking. And what he's saying is interesting. Go on. He claims he was hired to grab Charlotte by someone inside the Volkov organization, but not by Dmitry himself. Someone wanted to confirm her identity before taking it higher up the chain. He's willing to give us a name in exchange for protection. I exchanged a glance with Charlotte, whose face had gone pale. Who? He's only talking to you. Says he wants guarantees before he gives up someone that dangerous. Set it up, I decided. I want to know who inside the Bratva is moving pieces without Dmitry's knowledge. That kind of disloyalty could be useful. After Marcus left, Charlotte sank into one of the conference room chairs, her earlier strength fading as exhaustion and pain caught up with her. This is really happening, she whispered. I spent 8 years trying to avoid this exact scenario, and here we are anyway. Yes, we are, I agreed, pulling up a chair beside her. But this time, you're not alone. This time you have me and an army of people willing to fight for you. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Better, I said firmly, taking her hand again. Always better to face the darkness with someone beside you than to face it alone. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and we sat like that for a long moment, gathering strength from each other. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, millions of people going about their lives unaware of the storm brewing in the penthouse above them. Carter, Charlotte said softly, what happens after? If we survive this, if we somehow defeat my father and protect Clara, what kind of life can we have? You're not going to suddenly become a legitimate businessman, and I can't pretend I don't know what you do. We'll figure it out, I promised. Maybe I start the transition out of the illegal side of things, focus more on the legitimate businesses. Maybe we leave the city entirely, start over somewhere new. Or maybe we stay and build something better, use the power we have to make things safer rather than more dangerous. You'd give up all this? She gestured vaguely at the room, the building, the empire I'd spent years constructing. for me and Clara? In a heartbeat. I tilted her chin up so she was looking at me. Charlotte, I built all of this because I was trying to fill a void left when you disappeared. The money, the power, the respect. None of it meant anything because the one person I wanted to share it with was gone. Now you're back, and we have a daughter who deserves better than a father who's always looking over his shoulder. So yes, I'd give it all up if that's what it takes to keep you both safe and happy. Tears tracked down her cheeks. I don't deserve you. You keep saying that. Maybe one day you'll believe me when I say you're wrong. We were interrupted by Antonio appearing in the doorway. Boss, sorry to disturb, but the little one is asking for her mother. She's getting worried. Charlotte wiped her eyes quickly and stood, wincing at the movement. I should go to her. She's been through so much today already. We'll both go, I said, rising and offering my arm for support. She needs to see that we're united, that nothing is going to separate our family again. As we walked back to the game room, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of a precipice. Everything I'd built, everything I'd become, was about to be tested in ways I couldn't fully anticipate. The Volkov Bratva wasn't like the local gangs and criminal organizations I'd dealt with before. They were international, sophisticated, and utterly ruthless. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd underestimated what a man would do for his family, and that mistake would cost them everything. Clara looked up as we entered, her face brightening at the sight of us together. Mama, Daddy told me I could pick any game I wanted. Can you play with us? The casual way she called me Daddy, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, made my chest tighten with emotion. This was what I'd been missing, what Charlotte had been protecting her from all these years. And now that I had it, I would move heaven and earth to keep it. Of course I can play, Charlotte said, settling carefully onto the couch beside Clara. What are we playing? As they explained the game's rules, and Clara enthusiastically described all the features Antonio had shown her, I stood back and watched my family. Charlotte's head bent close to Clara's dark curls, their features so similar it was impossible to miss the relationship. Our daughter, brilliant and brave and so full of life that it hurt to look at her sometimes. This was worth fighting for. This was worth dying for if it came to that. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Russo ready to talk. Meet at hospital in 2 hours. Come alone, or he won't cooperate. I looked at Charlotte and Clara, at the picture of domestic peace they presented, and felt my resolve harden into something unbreakable. Whatever secrets Russo had to share, whatever information he could provide about the players moving against us, I would extract it by any means necessary. The war was coming, but first, I needed to understand exactly who the enemy was, and then I would destroy them so completely that the Volkov name would become a warning rather than a threat. For my family, for Charlotte, for Clara, for the life we deserve to live without fear or shadows. I would burn the world down first. The hospital was quiet at this hour, most visitors gone home and the overnight staff moving through their routines with practiced efficiency. I'd come alone as requested, though I knew Marcus had positioned men at every exit, and Stefano was monitoring from a van in the parking lot. Alone didn't mean unprotected, not in my world. Russo's room was on the 4th floor, isolated from other patients and under guard by 2 police officers who'd been on my payroll for years. They nodded respectfully as I approached, stepping aside without question. Inside, Vincent Russo lay propped against pillows, his chest wrapped in bandages and tubes running from his arms to various machines that beeped steadily. He looked pale and diminished, nothing like the cocky mid-level operator who'd thought he could use Charlotte as leverage. Blackwood, he croaked when he saw me, his voice rough from the breathing tube they'd recently removed. Wasn't sure you'd actually come. You have information I need, I replied, pulling up a chair beside the bed but remaining standing. Never sit when meeting with an enemy. It gives them a psychological advantage. Marcus said you'd talk if I guaranteed your protection. So talk. He licked his dry lips, eyes darting nervously to the door. First, I need to know you'll keep me alive. The people who hired me, they don't leave loose ends. I'll keep you alive as long as your information proves valuable, I said coldly. But understand this, Russo. You kidnapped and hurt the mother of my child. The only reason you're breathing right now is because you might be useful. Don't waste this opportunity. He swallowed hard, clearly understanding the precariousness of his position. Fair enough. The person who hired me to grab Charlotte wasn't working directly for Dmitry Volkov. It was his sister's son, Alexei Volkov. He's been positioning himself as Dmitry's heir for years, but with no legitimate children to compete with, it's been more or less guaranteed. Until Charlotte's resurrection potentially gave Dmitry a grandchild, I finished, seeing the picture immediately. Alexei wants to eliminate the competition before Dmitry knows it exists. Exactly. He hired me to confirm the woman was really Charlotte Volkov, to get proof of the kid's paternity, and then to eliminate them both and make it look like a random crime. He figured by the time Dmitry learned his daughter had been alive and died again, it would be too late to do anything about it. I felt cold fury wash through me at the casual way he described planning to murder my family. What else? Alexei's been building his own power base within the Bratva, loyal soldiers who report to him first and Dmitry second. He's planning a coup, but he needs his uncle to die naturally, or at least look like he died naturally. A granddaughter showing up would complicate things, might make Dmitry name her as his heir instead of his nephew. Alexei couldn't allow that. How many people know about Charlotte and Clara? Just Alexei and his inner circle, maybe 5 or 6 guys total. He's been keeping it quiet until he could resolve the problem permanently. But he's getting impatient. After I failed to kill them, he'll send someone more competent, someone who won't hesitate or make mistakes. Let him send whoever he wants. I leaned forward, letting Russo see the deadly promise in my eyes. Anyone who comes for my family dies screaming. Pass that message along if you get the chance. There's more, Russo said quickly, seeing I was about to leave. Alexei has a contact inside your organization. Someone feeding him information about your movements, your security protocols. That's how I knew where to find Charlotte. Because this person told Alexei where she was living. The words hit me like a physical blow. A traitor. Someone inside my inner circle betraying my trust and putting my family at risk. Who? I don't know. Alexei never told me names, just fed me information when I needed it. But whoever it is, they have high-level access. They knew about Charlotte coming to your building, knew about your response to the kidnapping, everything. I thought through the possibilities, mentally reviewing everyone who'd been involved in the rescue and aftermath. Marcus, Victor, Antonio, Stefano. They were the only ones who'd known all the details. One of them was a traitor. The thought made me sick. If you're lying to me, if this is some play to cause dissension in my ranks, I'll make your death last days instead of seconds, I warned. I'm not lying. Russo's voice cracked with desperation. I'm a dead man either way, Blackwood. Alexei will kill me to tie up loose ends, and you'll kill me for what I did to your woman. My only hope is that your protection lasts long enough for me to get into witness protection, or disappear somewhere Alexei can't find me. I got nothing to gain by lying. Tentar. Novamente. A continuar. I left him there, surrounded by machines and guards, a broken man waiting to see which of his many enemies would reach him first. As I walked back through the hospital corridors, my mind raced through the implications of what he'd told me. A traitor in my organization. Someone I trusted had been feeding information to Alexei Volkov, putting Charlotte and Clara at risk. The betrayal burned hotter than any physical wound, a violation of the loyalty that held my entire empire together. But I couldn't act on suspicion alone. One wrong accusation could fracture the trust that bound my men together. I needed proof, needed to identify the traitor with absolute certainty before I moved against them. My phone buzzed as I reached the parking lot. A message from an unknown number. Just an address and a time. Pier 19, 3 a.m. Come alone if you want the truth about your daughter. I checked my watch. 2 hours. Enough time to get back to the penthouse, check on Charlotte and Clara, and prepare for whatever trap was being laid at Pier 19. Because it was definitely a trap. The only question was whether the bait would be worth walking into it. Stefano pulled the SUV around as I emerged from the hospital entrance. "Everything all right, boss?" he asked, his eyes constantly scanning our surroundings with professional paranoia. "We'll see," I replied, sliding into the back seat. "Take me home. I need to make some arrangements." The drive back gave me time to think, to plan. If Alexei Volkov was making his move, trying to eliminate Charlotte and Clara before Dmitri learned of their existence, then I needed to force the situation into the open. Secrets and shadows favored my enemies. Sunlight and public knowledge would force everyone's hand. Charlotte was waiting when I entered the penthouse, curled up on the sofa in my study with a book she wasn't really reading. She looked up as I entered, anxiety clear in her green eyes. "What did Russo tell you?" she asked, setting the book aside. I told her everything, watching her face go pale as I described Alexei's plans. "Your cousin wants you and Clara dead before your father learns you exist. He sees you as a threat to his inheritance." Alexei. She said the name like a curse. I should have known. He always resented me growing up, hated that I was Dmitri's daughter when he was only a nephew. But I didn't think he'd go this far. "He's hired someone inside my organization to feed him information," I continued, watching her reaction carefully. "Someone close enough to know our movements and plans." Her eyes widened. "You think I'm involved? That I'm somehow working with him?" "No," I said firmly, moving to sit beside her. "If I thought that, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I need you to think carefully. Is there anyone from your old life who might have followed you here? Anyone who might have infiltrated my organization to get close to you?" She was quiet for a long moment, her mind clearly racing through possibilities. "There was someone," she said finally. "Years ago, before I met you. One of my father's soldiers, younger than the others. He was kind to me when no one else was, taught me things about surviving in that world. His name was Dmitri too, like my father. We called him Dima to avoid confusion. What happened to him? I thought he died in the accident I staged to fake my death. He was supposed to be in the car with me, but at the last minute I told him to stay behind. I couldn't let him die for my freedom. But what if he survived? What if he's been looking for me all these years?" The pieces were starting to fit together, but I needed more information. "Describe him. Physical characteristics, skills, any distinguishing features." As she described him, a cold dread settled in my stomach. Dark hair, athletic build, scar along his left forearm from a knife fight, spoke 3 languages fluently, expert in security systems and surveillance. The description matched someone I knew, someone who'd been with me for 5 years. Victor. Victor, who'd been my senior lieutenant, who'd never hesitated to follow my orders, who'd been present for every major decision I'd made in the past 5 years. Victor, whose background I'd never fully investigated because he'd been vouched for by Marcus, because he'd proven himself valuable in a dozen situations. "Did Dima have any tattoos?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Yes, a small Orthodox cross on his right shoulder blade. He said it was to remind him that even in our world, redemption was possible. I'd seen that tattoo in the gym we maintained for the men, though Victor always claimed it was from his childhood in Ukraine. Another lie, another layer of deception. "Stay here," I told Charlotte, pulling out my phone. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Marcus. I'll be back within the hour. Carter, what are you going to do? I'm going to find out if my loyal lieutenant is actually your father's spy. I kissed her forehead quickly. And then I'm going to deal with the situation appropriately. I called Marcus as I headed for the elevator, my voice tight with controlled fury. I need Victor brought to the warehouse on Sullivan Street. Now. Don't tell him why. Don't give him time to prepare. Just get him there. Boss, what's going on? I'll explain when I arrive. But Marcus, bring him in quietly. If he resists, put him down hard. I need him alive, but I don't need him comfortable. 20 minutes later, I stood in the cavernous warehouse where I conducted the business I preferred to keep away from my legitimate operations. Victor was secured to a chair in the center of the empty space, his hands zip-tied behind his back, confusion and the beginning of fear showing on his face. Marcus stood nearby with 2 other men, weapons drawn, clearly uncertain about what was happening. Boss, Victor's been with us for 5 years. Whatever this is about. His real name is Dmitry Volkov, I interrupted, watching Victor's face for confirmation. The flash of recognition, quickly suppressed, told me everything I needed to know. He was embedded in my organization to keep track of Charlotte, to report back to Alexei about our movements and plans. That's insane, Victor protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Boss, I've bled for you. I've killed for you. Why would you believe? Because Charlotte described you perfectly before I ever mentioned your name, I said coldly, pulling out my knife and examining the blade. Because the tattoo on your shoulder matches the one she remembers from her father's compound. And because the look on your face right now tells me everything I need to know. I moved closer, letting him see the anger burning in my eyes. You've been feeding information to Alexei Volkov. You helped him find Charlotte. You put my daughter at risk. The only question is whether you did it for money, for loyalty to the Volkov family, or for love of a girl you knew years ago. Victor stared at me for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged in defeat. Love, he admitted quietly. I loved her, even though I knew she could never love me back. When she faked her death, I was devastated. But then I found evidence she might still be alive, and I spent years tracking her. You found her living with me. Yes, and I saw how happy she was, how you loved her. I convinced myself to let her go, to let her have the life she wanted. But then she disappeared, and I thought maybe she'd run from you the same way she ran from her father. I joined your organization thinking I could protect her from a distance. And then Alexei contacted you, I prompted. Victor nodded. 6 months ago. He knew about my past, knew I'd been close to Charlotte. He said if I helped him confirm she was alive and locate her, he'd let me see her one last time before he killed her. I told him no at first, but he threatened to reveal my identity to you, to destroy everything I'd built here. So you betrayed us. I tried to protect her. His voice rose with desperation. Every piece of information I gave Alexei, I made sure it wasn't enough to actually hurt Charlotte. I warned her through anonymous messages when I knew something was coming. I'm the reason she managed to survive as long as she did. And Russo? You gave him Charlotte's address. I thought if I gave them something, they'd back off for a while. I didn't know they'd move so fast, that they'd take her right away. By the time I realized what was happening, you were already launching the rescue. I looked at this man who'd worked beside me for 5 years, who'd saved my life on at least 2 occasions, who'd proven his loyalty in 100 different ways. All of it had been a lie, built on a foundation of misplaced love and manipulation by Alexei Volkov. Marcus, I said quietly, take the others and wait outside. What happens next is between Victor and me. Marcus hesitated. Boss, if you're going to kill him, let me do it. You shouldn't have to. I said wait outside. My tone left no room for argument. Marcus nodded once and shepherded the other men toward the exit, leaving me alone with the traitor who'd endangered everything I held dear. When the door closed, I moved to stand directly in front of Victor. You have one chance to make this right. One opportunity to prove that there's still something worth saving in you. What do you want? Alexei sent me a message, told me to meet him at Pier 19 at 3 a.m. It's a trap, obviously. But I'm going anyway because I need to end this before it escalates further. You're going to tell me everything you know about his plans, his security, his weaknesses, and then you're going to help me kill him. Victor looked up at me, surprise evident in his expression. You're not going to kill me? I haven't decided yet, I admitted. Charlotte will make that decision. You betrayed me, but you betrayed her first. Her judgment matters more than mine in this case. But either way, Alexei Volkov dies tonight. The only question is whether you help me or die beside him. He was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. I'll help you. Not for you, but for Charlotte. She deserves to be free of this. To raise your daughter without looking over her shoulder. Then start talking. We have 2 hours to plan an ambush, and I need to know everything. For the next hour, Victor detailed Alexei's operations, his security protocols, his habits and preferences. He described the soldiers who were loyal to Alexei versus those who followed Dmitri, the safe houses and communication methods, the connections to other criminal organizations. It was a wealth of information that would have taken months to gather through conventional intelligence means. Victor had been positioned perfectly to observe both sides of the conflict, and now he was giving me everything I needed to destroy Alexei Volkov completely. He'll have at least 10 men at the pier, Victor concluded. Probably positioned in the warehouses on either side, with a clear line of sight to anyone approaching from the street. He's expecting you to come alone, which means he'll be looking for backup and prepared to deal with it. Then we don't come from the street, I said, already formulating a plan. Marcus, get in here. My head of security entered immediately, clearly having been listening from just outside the door. Boss? Call in everyone. I want 30 men at Pier 19, but I want them arriving by water. Boats approaching from both directions, quiet engines, night vision equipment. We surround the pier before I make my entrance, and when Alexei makes his move, we close the trap around him. What about Victor? I looked at the man who'd betrayed us, seeing the desperate hope in his eyes. He comes with me. If he's telling the truth about Alexei's setup, he'll prove valuable. If he's lying, he dies first. Victor nodded his understanding. There would be no mercy if this was another layer of deception. By 2:30 a.m., we were in position. I could see the dark shapes of our boats surrounding the pier from my vantage point in the SUV. Could hear Marcus's voice in my earpiece confirming that everyone was ready. Victor sat beside me, his hands now free but 2 guns trained on him from Stefano and Antonio in the front seats. Last chance to tell me if there's anything else I should know, I said quietly. There's one more thing, Victor admitted. Alexei isn't just doing this for the inheritance. He genuinely hates Charlotte, blames her for making Dmitri soft, for being the favorite when he was just the nephew. This isn't just business for him. It's personal. Good, I replied, checking my weapons one final time. So is this. I stepped out of the SUV at exactly 3 a.m., walking toward the pier with measured steps that showed no fear or hesitation. The fog had rolled in from the harbor, creating an eerie atmosphere that muffled sounds and reduced visibility to a few dozen feet. Perfect conditions for an ambush. Blackwood, a voice called from somewhere in the mist. You came. I wasn't sure you would. You have information about my daughter, I replied, stopping in the center of the pier. Why wouldn't I come? Alexei Volkov emerged from the fog, flanked by 2 bodyguards. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with Charlotte's green eyes and aristocratic features. He looked like what he was, a spoiled prince of the criminal underworld who'd never had to truly fight for anything. "Your daughter," he said, with a mocking smile. "Yes, let's talk about Clara. Such a pretty little thing. It would be a shame if something happened to her. If you touch her, there won't be a place on this earth where you can hide from me," I said calmly, letting him see the promise of death in my eyes. Threats, how predictable. He circled me slowly, his guards maintaining their positions. "You don't understand your situation, Blackwood. I have connections you can't imagine, resources that dwarf your little empire. You're a king of one city. My family controls nations. And yet here you are, sneaking around behind your uncle's back, trying to eliminate his granddaughter before he learns she exists. That doesn't sound like the actions of someone confident in their position." His smile faltered. "Charlotte should have stayed dead. It was better for everyone. Better for her. Better for her daughter. Better for me. But she had to survive. Had to come crawling back into the world. And she had to involve you, of all people. She didn't involve me. She tried to stay away to protect me. But your hired thug changed that when he kidnapped her. Russo was supposed to kill them both quickly and quietly. Instead, he gave you time to mount a rescue and exposed everything. Sloppy work. He's paying for that mistake now. "Russo's under my protection," I informed him. "Whatever assassin you sent to the hospital found only bullets waiting." Alexei's expression darkened. "You interfere in things you don't understand. This is Volkov family business. Charlotte belongs to us, and so does her daughter. They'll come back to the family one way or another." "They belong to me," I corrected. "And I don't share." "Then I guess we have a problem." Alexei snapped his fingers, and suddenly I was surrounded by red laser sights, at least 8 of them painting my chest and head. "See? I came prepared for your arrogance. You're going to come quietly, and then we're going to have a conversation about how this situation resolves itself. Spoiler alert, it ends with Charlotte and Clara back in Russia, and you in the Hudson River." I smiled, and it must have been unsettling because Alexei took an involuntary step backward. "You made 2 mistakes tonight," I told him. "First, you assumed I came alone. Second, you positioned your men exactly where my informant told me you would." "Informant? What are you—" His question was cut off by the sound of gunfire erupting from the warehouses on either side of the pier. My men, positioned in the same locations Alexei's soldiers had occupied, opened fire with precision and overwhelming force. The laser sights disappeared as their owners were eliminated, the ambush becoming a slaughter in seconds. Alexei dove for cover behind a shipping container, his bodyguards returning fire even as my men closed in from all sides. I pulled my own weapons and advanced, no longer the target, but the predator. "Marcus, status," I said into my mic. 11 hostiles down, 2 surrendered. The pier is ours." Victor emerged from the fog, his own weapon drawn. "Let me, boss. For Charlotte. For what I did to her." I considered for a moment, then nodded. "Don't kill him yet. I want answers first." We found Alexei hiding behind the container, his expensive suit torn and bloodied from diving for cover. His bodyguards lay dead nearby, cut down by the crossfire. He looked up as we approached, fear replacing the arrogance he'd displayed minutes earlier. "You can't kill me," he said desperately. "I'm Dmitry Volkov's nephew. Killing me means war with the entire Bratva." "War was inevitable the moment you came after my family," I replied. "But you're right about one thing. I'm not going to kill you." Hope flickered in his eyes, quickly extinguished as Victor stepped forward. "Remember me, Alexei?" Victor asked quietly. "Dima, from the compound. You used me, threatened me, forced me to betray people I cared about. All so you could inherit an empire built on blood and fear." "Dima? But you're supposed to be—" Dead with Charlotte? Yes, that was the plan. But we both survived, and now you're going to pay for everything you've done. I turned away as Victor raised his weapon, giving him this moment of vengeance. The gunshot echoed across the water, final and absolute. When I looked back, Alexei Volkov lay dead, his blood pooling on the wet pier. Victor stood over him, his weapon lowered, something like peace settling over his features. "It's done," he said quietly. "Alexei is dead, and his men with him. What happens now?" "Now we send a message to Dmitry Volkov," I replied, pulling out my phone. "We tell him his nephew tried to murder his daughter and granddaughter, and that I've eliminated the threat to his bloodline. We give him a choice: accept Charlotte's new life and stay away, or come to New York and face the same fate as his nephew." "He'll come," Victor warned. "Dmitry doesn't back down from challenges." "Then let him come. I'll be ready." I made the call from right there on the pier, surrounded by the bodies of men who'd thought they could threaten my family. A woman answered in Russian, clearly surprised to be receiving a call on Dmitry Volkov's private line at 4 a.m. "Tell Dmitry that Carter Blackwood needs to speak with him. Tell him it's about his daughter Charlotte and his granddaughter Clara. Tell him it's urgent." There was a long pause, muffled conversation in the background. Then a voice like gravel and ice came on the line. "Who is this?" "Carter Blackwood. I'm calling about your daughter." "My daughter is dead. Died 8 years ago in a car accident." "Your daughter is alive, living in my city, and raising your 7-year-old granddaughter. She's been in hiding because she was afraid of what you'd do if you found her. But tonight, your nephew Alexei tried to have them both killed so he could secure his inheritance. I've eliminated that threat, but I wanted you to hear the truth directly from me." Silence stretched across the line, so long I thought he might have hung up. Then, "My Charlotte is alive? And I have a grandchild?" "Yes, a daughter named Clara. She has your daughter's green eyes and my gray ones. She's brilliant, brave, and deserves to grow up without fear of her family." "Where is my nephew now?" "Dead, along with the 11 men who helped him try to murder your bloodline." Another pause. "You killed Alexei. I protected my family. He made the mistake of threatening them. I did what any father would do." I heard something that might have been a laugh or a sob. It was hard to tell across the distance and the crackling connection. "You love her, my daughter, with everything I have. And she loves you?" "Yes. Then perhaps we can find an arrangement that benefits us all. I wish to meet my granddaughter, but I have no desire to disrupt her life or take her from her mother. And if Charlotte has finally found happiness after all these years, I won't destroy it." The words should have brought relief, but I'd learned long ago not to trust promises made by men like Dmitry Volkov. "What do you want in exchange for leaving them in peace?" "A chance to know my grandchild. Nothing more. I'm getting old, Blackwood. My empire is strong, but what good is power if it dies with you? Maybe Clara can be the redemption my family needs. She's not yours to redeem. She's my daughter, and she'll be raised in my world, according to my values, not yours. Our worlds are not so different, I think." His voice carried a hint of amusement. "But we can discuss the details when I visit next week. I'll come alone, as a grandfather meeting his family, not as a viewer seeking vengeance. If you come with an army, you'll leave in a box." "Understood. Tell Charlotte I've missed her. Tell her I'm sorry for the life I forced her into. And tell Clara she has a grandfather who would very much like to meet her." The line went dead. I stood there in the fog, the weight of what had just transpired settling over me. I just negotiated a peace treaty with one of the most dangerous men in the world, all while standing over the body of his nephew. "Did that just happen?" Victor asked quietly. "It did. Whether it holds remains to be seen." I turned to face him. As for you, your fate is still undecided. Charlotte gets to choose whether you live or die, whether you're exiled or forgiven. But either way, your time in my organization is over. You betrayed us, and that's a line that can never be uncrossed. Victor nodded, accepting the judgment. I understand. For what it's worth, I really did try to protect her. Everything I did, even the betrayals, was meant to keep her alive until I could find a way out of Alexei's control. Tell that to Charlotte. She's the only one whose forgiveness matters now. But the sun was rising as we returned to the penthouse. Charlotte and Clara were asleep in the master bedroom, curled together like they'd spent the night reassuring each other that everything would be okay. I stood in the doorway watching them, still wearing clothes spattered with blood and gunpowder residue, and felt something in my chest finally unclench. It was done. Alexei was dead, Dmitri was making peace, and my family was safe. There would be complications ahead, negotiations with the Volkov patriarch, decisions about how much of their world to let into Clara's life, but those were problems for tomorrow. Charlotte stirred, her eyes opening and finding me in the doorway. She carefully extracted herself from Clara's embrace and padded over to where I stood. Is it over? She whispered, her hand coming up to rest over my heart. The immediate threat is over. Your father wants to meet Clara. He says he'll make peace if we allow it. Her eyes widened. You spoke to him? I called him from Alexei's body and told him everything. He seemed genuinely moved by the idea of having a granddaughter. Whether we can trust that remains to be seen. She leaned against me, exhaustion and relief making her sag. I never thought I'd hear my father express anything resembling human emotion. Maybe there's hope for peace after all. Maybe, I agreed, kissing the top of her head. But we'll be ready if there isn't. Clara stirred in the bed, her eyes opening and immediately seeking her mother. When she saw us both in the doorway, her face lit up with a smile that made everything I'd done tonight worthwhile. Daddy, she called sleepily, the name still new but already feeling natural. Did you win? I did, Princess. The bad men won't bother us anymore. Good. Can we have pancakes for breakfast? Charlotte laughed, the sound like music after the violence of the night. Yes, baby, we can have pancakes. As we moved into the kitchen to prepare breakfast as a family, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. The ruthless criminal kingpin stared back at me, blood-stained and dangerous. But in that moment, I was also simply a father making breakfast for his daughter. Both versions of me were real. Both were necessary. And together, they would protect this family against anything the world threw at us. The war with the Volkov Bratva had ended before it truly began. Now came the harder part. Building a life worth protecting, raising a daughter who deserved better than the world we'd made, and proving that even people like us could find redemption through love. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. But as I watched Charlotte teaching Clara how to crack eggs while both of them laughed at the mess they were making, I knew it would be worth every sacrifice, every battle, every impossible choice. This was my family, mine to love, mine to protect, mine to cherish. And heaven help anyone who tried to take them from me again.